Hello, everyone. Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. Hopefully you can all hear and see me okay. Thank you very much for joining us at this Your Overseas Home webinar. Today we are talking all about Cyprus. So if you're looking or interested in looking to move or invest over in Cyprus, you're in the right place. It's great to have you all here with us, whether you're listening in live or on demand. Today we are very lucky to be joined by Nikolas Avgousti from Polycarpos Philippou Law. We've been working with Polycarpos Philippou for a number of years now, and they've helped countless numbers of our clients who are undertaking similar journeys as yourself with their relocation requirements, with focus on visas, immigration, tax requirements that you have when moving overseas. So throughout the whole session today, we are going to be speaking to Nikolas all about that part of the buying process, hopefully get your questions answered. Throughout the session, at the bottom right-hand side of your screen, there should be a questions tab. Please feel free to ask as many questions in that questions tab as you'd like. Nikolas and I will be discussing them, hopefully answering all of them in detail. And then by the end of this session, you should have a better understanding or an idea of what is needed for your plans over in Cyprus. So Nikolas, thanks for being here. So it's great to have you here with us. Do you mind just giving us, I suppose, a brief introduction to yourself, but also a bit of information about Polycarpos Philippou?
Yeah, perfect. So this is Nikolas. A pleasure to be here and discuss for any questions generally how we can assist as a company, someone who wants to come in Cyprus. So basically, as a law firm, we're based in Paphos, but of course we assist clients all over Cyprus. We basically try to act as one-stop shop. So we provide all kinds of services, which is great because we don't want our clients to ask different law firms for assistance. It's better to have one person here in Cyprus who can provide all the services. So we do that. And yeah, myself, I'm specialized in immigration. But generally, as a law firm, we provide all kinds of services. So any questions or any legal matters, of course, we can give our help to any potential clients.
Perfect. Thanks. Yeah, thanks, Nikolas. And it's great to have you here with us. I know we're speaking before we started around what the weather's like in Paphos, and you said it was, I think, a cool, was it 30 degrees or something like that?
Yeah, it's pretty hot at the moment, but it's good. It's good for vacation, I would say, because the last 2 weeks it was raining, so now it's good.
Yeah, I guess it's getting to that point of the year where it gets hotter and hotter. But if for everyone listening in who's interested in Cyprus, what the part of the appeal is, of course, the weather. And I can assure you that Nikolas has already sold it to me before we started this webinar. So yeah, Nikolas, thanks again for being here. As mentioned to everyone listening in, it's going to be a question and answer style session. Put as many questions as you like in that questions tab. If you want to trial it out and tell us where you're looking in Cyprus, just to see how it all works, so we can see some of the engagement from you listening in, and we'll answer them as we go through. We do have some pre-planned questions which we received from our audience earlier on in the weeks that we're going to go through, covering the legal process, and then we'll move through onto the visa, residency, and immigration side of things, Nikolas. So, Nikolas, I guess the first place to start around the legal process is buying a property overseas is a big undertaking. There's a lot to think about. What are the first legal steps, or what are the first steps in the process of buying a property overseas in regards or in relation to a lawyer or a relocation expert?
So basically, in order to buy a property in Cyprus, you don't even need to be here in Cyprus during the process. We just act on behalf of the clients. We get power of attorney, so we can help for them. In order to get a property in Cyprus, you don't need any special, let's say, residency permit. Of course, if you are non-EU, you need to get the Council of Ministers permit, which is an approval issued. It's basically issued to anyone which is non-EU. The thing is, because someone which is non-EU is only able to register up to 2 properties into his name, he needs to get this special permit. After that, of course, if someone wants to make a big investment, they can purchase the properties through companies, Cyprus companies, which is a Cyprus person, so they can purchase through that. But this is the only, let's say, permit someone really needs in order to get a property. When it comes to residency, right? If let's say someone has Cyprus as holiday home, so they only have a property that they come, let's say, 2 months during summer, and that's it. They don't need the residency permit. The residency permit is when someone wants to be in Cyprus more than 90 days every 180 days. So that's the only reason someone should get a permit if they want to extend their stays, basically.
Sure. Okay, great. And just so I'm clear then, so let's say I'm looking to retire or fully relocate to Cyprus. In that example, I would need residency, I presume?
Yes.
Yes. And then on the other hand, if I was looking to have a holiday home and spend longer than 90 or 180 days in Cyprus, I would need a visa, I presume?
Basically, as British, let's say, for example, you can come in Cyprus, you don't need something special, you can just fly to Cyprus. There is no, let's say, tourist visa for British. It's for other countries, for example, let's say Thailand or some countries impose tourist visas. Then yes, if your country imposes a tourist visa, you need to get that from your country. But when you are here in Cyprus, you can spend these 90 days. And then if you want to extend it, then of course you get a residency permit.
Gotcha. Okay, brilliant. No, thank you, Nicholas. That's really clear. And I suppose one of the questions that I have around the buying process is, in order to actually purchase a property in Cyprus, is there certain things that I need to have in place? So, for example, would I need to have a visa in place, or would I need to be a resident? You know, what are the legal footsteps that I need to take in order to actually buy a property in Cyprus?
Well, let's say in order to buy a property in Cyprus, there is not something, let's say, legal aspect that you really need to be careful. For example, for the residency, we know for a fact that you need a clean criminal record. You need to open the bank account in Cyprus. You need to have the marriage certificate if you are married, and have all these documents apostilled so they can be used in Cyprus and be, you know, formal documents here. When it comes to purchasing the property, it's basically the Council of Ministers permit that is the legal document in this transaction that enables you to purchase a property and register it into your name. But other than that, the legal requirements when it comes to the background of the person is when it comes to the residency. Of course, in order to purchase the property, you need to verify the source of funds, which this is the most important part in the purchasing transaction. But this is basically it when it comes to the purchase. The legal background is when it comes to the residency permit.
Okay, brilliant. And while we're on the topic of the residency permit, I know Caitlin listening in has asked the question of how long does the residency permit allow you to actually be in Cyprus? Do you mind just adding a bit of information around how long someone would be eligible to stay in Cyprus with that residency permit?
Yes, of course. Of course, it depends on the type of permit, but the most common residency permit is the temporary residency permit, which is valid for up to 1 year, but usually it's indeed valid for 1 year. Sometimes it's 9 months, but usually it's 1 year. After the expiration of that, basically we renew it right before the expiration. So you keep renewing it every year. It doesn't have a limit how many times you can renew it. Of course, you need to meet the criteria. The most important one is the minimum criteria, which is 24,000 euros annual income for one person, and let's say 29 roughly for a couple, plus around 4,000 euros for each independent child. So this is the most important criteria, financial criteria, and of course the clean criminal record, the marriage certificate, and some other administration stuff. But when it comes to the important criteria, of course, is the income criteria. So you can renew it. So this is valid for 1 year. The other common, let's say, permit is the permanent residency by investment. So if someone invests in Cyprus in a property or share capital in Cyprus company, they more than 300,000 plus VAT, they can get a permanent residency permit, which is valid for life. So this doesn't need any other renewal processing.
Perfect. Yeah, thank you, Nikolas. So that's it's really clear. And I know, Caitlin, you said how often did you have to renew it? And the information that I wasn't aware of as well, Nikolas, is around the financial requirements needed to apply, but also to reapply on an annual basis. Just on the 24,000 euros per person. Would something like a pension, a state pension, count towards that?
Yes, everything counts. Basically, the income criteria is any income received from abroad, any source, rents, dividends, stocks, interest rate, pension funds, pensions, salary,
Sure.
anything counts towards the limit.
Okay. All right, but it's any sort of source of income would count towards the 24. And just to clarify, and then if you're a couple, it was 29,000 euros to renew, and then for every dependent, was it an additional?
Yeah, basically it's 24,000 euros for one applicant plus 20% for the spouse. So I think it's 28.8, and then another 15% for each dependent child. So it's, let's say, 32,033 for a family of 3, and then it adds up 15% for each another child.
Okay. Brilliant, thank you, Nikolas. So we've got a question here about the residency part of the process, but also visa side of things here from Steve, asking how long does the process normally take from applying for residency permit or applying for a visa to the point of being granted that visa or residency permit? How long does that process normally take from start to finish?
Okay, so basically by the time you request the appointment, they usually arrange it for temporary residency permits 2 months, or let's say 1.5 months, but let's say 2 months after the date you request it. So during this 2 months period, we collect everything financially, background, anything that we need for the application. After 2 months, let's say we attend the appointment and we submit the application. During the submission of the application, we get the receipt of submission and payment. These receipts show the ARC, which is the registration number of the applicant. So this is considered, let's say, pre-approval of your application. With these receipts, they can freely travel, enter and re-enter Cyprus without counting the 90 days. The cards are received usually 6 to 8 months after the date you submit your application, but this doesn't really matter at all, because by having the receipts with you, it's like you already have the card. With the permanent residency cards, these cards are issued usually 8 to 10 months after, again, you submit your application, but that's it. It doesn't really affect the temporary residency permit especially. So by the time you receive it, it's all done basically.
Okay, great. And I suppose, what does that sort of process looks like if someone is interested in a certain type of visa, or if someone is interested in a permanent resident permit? What does that process look like? Will they have like a consultation call with yourself, Nikolas? Do you then talk about the different options? What does that part of the process look like?
So basically, when someone contacts us, we need to, of course, understand exactly the kind of permit it is suitable for them, and that, of course, they meet the criteria for submitting this application. We always advise we advise if the application will be approved, of course, according to the criteria, the financial and the legal background. So all the times we inform the clients if they are eligible or not. After, let's say, they are eligible and we start the process, we start collecting all the documents. And let's say 2 months later, we attend the migration department where the property is located. So even though we are based in Paphos, if the property is located, let's say, in Larnaca, we will need to visit Larnaca migration to submit the application of the applicant. So we visit there, we submit the applications with the client, and the client needs to be there because they take biometrics on spot. So it's important for the client to also be with us during the appointment.
Sure. Okay, then that's useful to know because I presume a lot of our listeners are probably not in Cyprus at the moment, and they're planning to look at properties, and it may be one of those things that they can tie into the property viewing trip, or something they can plan instead of having to go back and forth numerous times to do the biometrics and things like that. So by the sounds of things, it's worthwhile to have that conversation around the individual requirements of what they're looking to do in Cyprus to then plan and propose the best visa or the best course of action.
Exactly.
We've got a couple of more questions coming through, and thank you for everyone who's put the questions through. One here from Andrew is around Andrew's wife, who is a consultant doctor. Don't know necessarily what country. What would someone need to do in Andrew's case? What would his wife need to do in order to continue to be able to practice being a doctor in Cyprus? Would there be some sort of visa?
Yes, for this specific situation, when it comes to work permit, even though we, as a law firm, we don't provide this kind of service, as in general information, when it comes to doctors, because doctors and basically pharmaceutical doctors, medicine, IT, and these highly skilled professionals are easier for them to apply directly and get the work permit here in Cyprus. Because a doctor is considered as highly skilled in Cyprus, it's a faster process and easier process to apply. In such situations, someone needs to find, let's say, the preferable clinic or hospital or something in Cyprus that they want to apply, and they apply directly there. So this process, the employer, the clinic, the institute will directly give them the information they need in order to hire them and do their permit, because it's the employer who is responsible to hire and bring in Cyprus and do the permit of such employees. Okay.
Brilliant. You say, Andrew, sounds like your wife has a bit of a fast track to getting a visa over there.
Correct.
in Cyprus. So that's really interesting. So I suppose in Andrew's and his wife's circumstances, the best course of action would be for her to then approach potential practices or hospitals or whatever it may be, and apply directly through them for the visa to be able to continue working over in Cyprus, which is great.
But an important criteria, sorry to interrupt, a very important criteria that maybe should be required, it should be the knowledge of Greek language in order to be registered as a doctor in Cyprus. So I'm not sure, because we are not specialized in this specific area, and especially when it comes to medicine. But I think that should be a requirement in order to be registered with the doctors.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that's good to know. And let's say Andrew's wife is successful in receiving a visa. Would that visa also grant Andrew eligibility to be in Cyprus long term as well, or would he have to get a separate visa aside from his wife?
Usually in this type of permits, when the applicant is married to someone, they can also apply together. But of course, every time it depends on the specific permit someone receives, because every permit has its own limitations and requirements. So before knowing the exact permit, let's say someone received, we cannot really tell if they can bring their spouses and children with them, or whether the family members need to apply with a different kind of permit.
Okay. All right, thank you, Nikolas. And yes, good questions coming through, and thank you, Andrew, for yours. And so we'll get through to hopefully as many of these as possible. We've got one here from Paul, Nikolas, and Paul is very luckily visiting Cyprus next week to have a look at some properties with the potential view to move across there and hopefully live over there. So Paul, very jealous first and foremost of your plans. Paul has a business where he works remotely. He says he probably has enough cash to buy a property outright, so no mortgage or anything needed. Is it possible to get potentially a small mortgage over in Cyprus? Is that something that is feasible?
Yes. Again, it depends on the requirements of each bank, but generally, when someone is in Cyprus and has a residency, the bank will easily apply a loan or give a loan, but of course, provided that they will need to mortgage the property. So this is the security for the bank. So they would need, the bank, for example, will need to attend the land registry during the completion of the transaction and put a mortgage on the property someone is going to purchase. So it's easier for the bank to give the loan, but again, for someone, it's easy way to get the support from the bank.
Okay, brilliant. And it sounds like it's something you can definitely do, Paul. And if you are going across to Cyprus next week with perhaps the view to hopefully find the right property and put on offers, 100% have a conversation with Nikolas and the team at Polycarpos Philippou, because from my experience, finding the property can be the hardest part, and then things can move quite quickly. You want to make sure that you're you're prepared, you're speaking to the right contacts, which you are, of course, because you're here listening to this webinar. So we'll pass your details across, and I'm sure Nikolas can get in touch and offer you a bit more support. We've got a question here, which is fairly common in these sort of residency and visa discussions, is around someone's wife or partner who may be an EU citizen when they perhaps are a UK citizen or American citizen. So John asks, his wife is an EU citizen. Unfortunately, he's not, and they're looking at a yellow slip for residency. They may look at a rental first, and then perhaps with a view to purchase a property in the future. Are there any issues with renting through the residency process? Is that something that is something to think about at all, Nikolas?
Actually, my advice to all of our clients is to rent for the first year or the first couple of years, because when someone relocates in Cyprus, they can't really tell from, especially if it is their first time in Cyprus, they cannot really tell if this property or this area or this city is the best for them to live in Cyprus. So it's better to rent a property for the first year or the first 2 years, for example, so they can explore Cyprus and decide, let's say, if Paphos, Limassol, or let's say Larnaca is the best city for them to live. When someone is an EU citizen and she or he is married to someone, then the partner, of course, can also apply for the yellow slip. It's the same process, but the only difference is that the EU citizen receives a certificate, while the non-EU citizen receives a card. The card expires after 5 years, and of course, they can renew it after that. That's the only difference. But when it comes to general rights, as long as, of course, they are married and they are in Cyprus, they have the same rights. Even the non-EU citizen can work and do whatever as a local or an EU citizen could do in Cyprus.
Okay, great. Thank you, Nikolas. Thanks for the question as well, Paul. I think, sorry, that was not Paul, that was John. Thank you, John. I know Cyprus isn't the biggest island in the world, but you do have a real variety of different locations, different towns, cities. I even heard that there was skiing, I believe, at certain points in Cyprus of the year, which blew my mind. That was an interesting one. But okay, great. And we'll move on to the next question. Which comes through from Susan. I believe we've actually already discussed this, but Susan, just to clarify, so Susan asked, how much do we need to have each year on a retirement visa for a couple? Can this amount just sit in a Cypriot bank? So going back to perhaps the residency permit, can Susan, for example, just have a lump sum in a Cypriot bank, which would fulfill the requirements to say, I earn 24,000 euros a year? Would that be sufficient, or would it have to be income?
So basically, in order, this applies to everyone. For example, I understand it's a couple in this situation. So for example, it should be 28,800 euros for a couple. So let's say if someone receives this income as a pension, they don't have to transfer the pensions, at least the full amount here in Cyprus. But what is important, because the requirements for the residency permit is to open a local bank account. So when someone opens the local bank account, they need to transfer through the full year. So for the renewal, for example, they're going to need to show 12 months statements in the local bank account showing that the 29,000 euros have been transferred here in Cyprus. If let's say someone receives 50,000 euros as annual income, they don't need to send the full amount here in Cyprus, but at least 29,000 euros will need to be transferred into the local bank account.
Okay, so for example, let's say in Susan's case and her partner's case, that for the first year they transfer 29,000 euros, and then the next year they transfer another 29,000 euros from savings here in the UK. That would be sufficient, would it? To
yes. Generally, it needs to be from any source. If they have savings in the bank account plus pensions, for example, in order to reach the 29,000 euros limit, yes, again you can do that. But you need to transfer this amount into the Cyprus bank account, so you prove them that you had this amount for the previous year.
Yeah, that makes sense. Thanks, Susan, for your question. Hopefully that answered it. If not, as I said, you'll see, everyone should be able to see Nikolas's contact information there. If you email or call, I'm sure he'll be able to help you in a bit more detail. You mentioned a few questions ago, Nikolas, it was mentioned around the yellow slip. What is the yellow slip? I actually haven't heard of it too frequently as well. Do you mind just adding a bit of information about what the yellow slip actually is over in Cyprus?
Yes. So again, the yellow slip is it's temporary residency permit, but it's valid for much longer than the temporary residency permit for the non-EU. Basically, the yellow slip is for the EU citizens. The pink slip is for the non-EU citizens. The yellow slip is issued to EU citizens, plus their family members being partners or children. So the yellow slip is the residency permit that someone gets when he comes in Cyprus for more than 90 days, as for, let's say, the non-EU. The yellow slip is way easier to be obtained than, let's say, the temporary permit for the non-EU, because for the yellow slip, you need basically source of income to prove what kind of income do you have, to rent a property in Cyprus or own a property, to have a medical insurance, either international or ones that you obtained in Cyprus, plus to, if you are married, to show the marriage certificate or the birth certificate of the children. It's a much easier processing time, and it gives you the right to work in Cyprus, to live in Cyprus. It's more flexible when it comes to how long you need to stay in Cyprus, so it does not get cancelled. For example, for the temporary permit for the non-EU, you need to be in Cyprus maximum. Basically, you cannot be outside of Cyprus for more than 90 days in a row. So if, let's say, is someone outside of Cyprus for, let's say, 90 days or 100 days, it has high chances for the permit to be cancelled. You can, of course, come in Cyprus, leave, and come back again, but you cannot be absent for extended stays. For the yellow slip, it's cancelled if you exceed 6 months in a row, and even in such cases, the authorities might not cancel it. So, yeah, that's all in all the differences. And of course, the major difference is with the yellow slip, you can work in Cyprus, but with the pink slip, the temporary permit for the non-EU, you cannot work in Cyprus.
Perfect. Yeah, thanks, Nikolas. So yellow, pink, different colours,
easy.
different things.
Yeah.
Okay, brilliant. No, so it's a good question, actually. Thank you, Linda, for picking up on that. And it gives you a bit more clarity about the difference between the yellow and obviously the pink slips. You mentioned there, Nick, when you're talking around medical insurance. I know for some European countries, you must have medical insurance in order to apply for visas. Is that the same case in Cyprus? And also, is it something that Polycarpos Philippou can assist with? Do you help with the medical side of things?
Yes, so basically the medical insurance needs to be either international one or ones you obtain while you are here in Cyprus. Of course, we already cooperate with some insurance companies, so if someone needs our assistance, we can request this insurance on client's behalf. If someone, of course, already has an insurance, they can get that. For EU citizens, for example, they can, after they come in Cyprus and they get their yellow slip, they can register with the general health system in Cyprus, so they don't need to have at least this medical insurance. Of course, if someone needs a comprehensive insurance, we always suggest that. But for example, many people don't want to have a private medical insurance, and they register with the general health system and they don't need the insurance anymore. So it's up to them. But if they need it, of course, we can get that.
Yeah, I suppose that's something that you will discuss with a client depending on what their requirements are and what they're looking to do over in Cyprus. And
Yes,
there's it's everyone's plans that's listening will be unique to yourself. So
yeah,
that's why it's important to have these conversations to understand what is the best visa or the best avenue for you to approach for your plans in Cyprus. We just going back to working in Cyprus. Dave asked a question around: are there any requirements if you want to live in Cyprus but work as a digital nomad for a non-Cypriot company? So, what are the requirements if you were looking to live in Cyprus but work for a non-Cypriot company?
Yeah. So sorry, I didn't hear it fully. For the digital nomad.
Digital nomad, yeah. So. I presume there is a digital nomad visa in Cyprus. Is that correct, Nikolas?
Yeah, currently they reopened it. There was previously 2022, if I'm not mistaken. It was 500 applications. Because they reached the limit, they stopped receiving applications. But in this March, they recently opened another 500 applications. So they are still accepting or receiving applications. If someone is interested on that, they need to hurry up because it's gonna be full in a few weeks. So basically, the only kind of criteria for that is to receive minimum 3,500 euros net per month, plus 20% for the spouse, plus 15% for each independent child. They need, of course, to be working for an IT technological industry for clients either abroad or an employer from abroad. They need to be in Cyprus, to be renting a property, and the others are just general criteria. But that's the most important: is the income criteria, the company that you work for, and it's important, of course, that it's for 1 year and with the option to renew it for another 2 years. So maximum is 3 years.
Okay. Brilliant. And yeah, Dave, good question. I think by the sounds of things, space is limited. I would love to go work over in Cyprus.
I'm currently receiving too many applications for digital nomads. So everyone needs to bear in mind that it's something that doesn't open frequently. The last time was 3 years ago. So they need to be fast. If they are sure, because you are not going to move in Cyprus just for this permit. But if they think it's a good opportunity, it's good to be fast with that.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, Dave, please, we'll pass your details across, but please feel free to get in touch if you are seriously thinking about it. Strike as quickly as you can while the iron's hot, and get one of those 500 golden tickets.
Correct way to say
that. Brilliant. So thanks for all the questions. You've got some really good ones coming through, and it's great to answer as many of them as we can. So just, I suppose, on the actual buying process over in Cyprus, a lot of our viewers will be looking to buy properties or invest in properties. As you mentioned, there's an argument to be had to be renting first, make sure you like the area. Once someone knows an area in Cyprus and they find a property, what is the general process of putting down an offer to then actually completing that property? How long does that take, and what are the steps within that buying journey?
Okay, so basically, let's say when someone finds a property and they put an offer, the process starts immediately. So the reservation agreement needs to be prepared and signed. So you basically lock the rights and obligations before the signing of the sale agreement. So let's say usually the reservation agreement is valid for for let's say 30 or 40 days. So within this time frame, we do all the legal investigation for the property to ensure that the property is good, the title deed is clear. If, for example, there is a title deed, there are no mortgages, and generally all the legal background of the property. Of course, in the meantime, we also prepare and negotiate the sale agreement. So usually within this month, we also sign the sale agreement. Once the sale agreement is signed, it needs to be stamped. We stamp it at the tax department, and then if the buyer is non-EU and they buy it they purchase it in their name, then we will need to submit for the Council of Ministers permit application. So in order to for the government basically to allow them to register this property into their name, this permit is what caused the most delays in the whole process, because currently it's between 3 to 5 months to receive this permit if the property is located in Paphos. If, let's say, the property is in Limassol or any other cities, usually the permit is issued with between 1 and 1.5 months. So the processing time is has some delays in Paphos. But the good thing about that is because everyone here in Paphos is aware of that, what we usually do in these situations, we arrange early delivery of possession. So the buyer pays the full amount. We prepare a supplementary agreement, so the full amount is paid. We receive the keys of the properties. So until the necessary permits are received, the buyer can get possession of the property if they wish to do so. So after the Council of Ministers permit is received, at the same time, the seller will arrange the tax clearance certificate for the property to ensure that the property is free from any taxes or dues owed to the government. So then we submit all documents to the land registry and we request a completion appointment. So the full time frame for the purchase really depends on the city, but I would say it should be around usually 5 to 8 months to complete a transaction.
Wow. Yeah, so there's a lot when you're talking there, because there's a lot to think about. There's a lot of parts of the journey. Even once you find a property, if you're renting, great, you're already in Cyprus, you can perhaps take your time. But if you're here in the UK and it's November, December, January, and you want to get across to Cyprus, it can take, as you said there, up to 8 months in some circumstances. So it's good to get that idea of the buying journey for everyone listening in, so they can be aware of that.
Yes, but they don't really need to be in Cyprus, of course, during the purchasing process, because of course we can assist them with the power of attorney. So someone, usually what they do, they come in Cyprus and they find the property, we start the process, they go back, let's say, to the UK to arrange everything, the movement and everything. So as soon as the property is finished and purchased and completed, they then travel to Cyprus. So again, we can work around the deadline.
Yeah, absolutely. And it goes back to it, because everyone listening will have their own plans, their own properties, their own unique requirements, and having that conversation just for them to understand perhaps what they need from assistance wise or support wise from someone like yourself is really important. And just going back then, here in the UK we have quite an interesting way of buying and selling houses, and I've recently been in the process of buying, and then the vendor pulled out at the last minute, which I was devastated about. Is there a point in that buying journey where a deposit's paid and someone is legally obligated to buy that property in Cyprus? Is that when the sale agreement is signed, for example?
Yes. So basically, when we sign the reservation agreement, this is the period when someone can pull out. When it is the seller, then of course the deposit is fully refundable to the buyer. If it is the buyer, there are certain circumstances that need to be met in order for the deposit to be refunded. For example, if the buyer just pull out because they changed their mind and they don't like the property anymore, or they found something better, then the deposit is not refundable. If, however, there are any problem with the property, there are mortgages that cannot be clear, there are problems with the physical structure of the property, with the legal structure, anything that it's not, it could not be seen when you inspect the property and you put the offer, then of course the deposit is refundable. So it really depends on the case. But when there is a serious problem, that's why we prepare the reservation agreement to protect the buyer especially, and make sure that when there is a problem, because of the property, then the deposit will be refunded.
Okay, great. And that's it's useful to know, and fingers crossed, everyone that falls in love with their property has a nice, smooth process. But it's worthwhile just to know the difference. People are buying in foreign country, foreign laws, foreign languages. So it is important that they're aware of potential ways that deposits are involved, or also if something goes wrong with the property and the checks, that they're protected. And that's exactly the support that the team at Polycarpos has given our clients that we've been introducing to you over the years. So thank you, Nikolas. That's great. I think we have covered all of the questions in the chat and all of the key topics around them buying in Cyprus. So Nikolas, thanks so much for your time and for being here, and for everyone listening in. Thank you for being here, and hopefully you've got your questions answered, but also found out a little bit more about how to buy in Cyprus, but also what the role of someone like Nikolas at Polycarpos is there to do. If you found it useful, there should be a link that just pops up on your screen for Trustpilot. We'd really appreciate it if you gave Nikolas and I a 5-star review that we could show to our bosses, which we'd be grateful for. But also, please do get in touch with Nikolas. All the contact details are there on the screen. I know for a fact he'll be more than happy to help with any of your requirements, no matter where you are within the buying process. It's never too early to start thinking about the steps needed for what you're looking to do. And also, Nikolas, we'll pass across the details of the listeners listening. And I know, I think it was Paul looking perhaps to come across fairly soon as well. There's been a question from Caitlin just coming around. Is this recorded? Yes, it is recorded. It will be on your Overseas Home website. So if you go into our on-demand section as well, you'll be able to listen to this in your own free time. If there's any questions at all, we're always here to help. You'll also be able to contact us directly. But Nikolas, thanks again to you. You've been great. I've learned a lot myself. So thank you for your time.
Thank you so much.
Thank
you so much for the time and for this interesting and overview and in detail meeting. So it was a pleasure, and of course we will be very happy to assist any potential clients with any questions and find the best solution and permit and property or anything that they actually need.
Yeah. So hopefully you'll get me across to Cyprus soon, and I can.
You should
do one of these in person.
In
person. I'm looking out my window. We've got some all right weather here today, but most of the time it's miserable. But no, Nikolas, thank you so much. It's great to catch up with you, and thanks for your knowledge and experience. And we'll speak soon.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Take care. Bye bye.
Cheers, Nikolas. Take care. Thanks, everyone. Bye bye.